Carolina Panthers open up training camp on a Wednesday morning, and I was there. I'll tell you what I saw right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I have all your training camp updates there. You can either at me or DM me on Twitter or at me on Blue Sky with any questions that you have throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and leading up to the 2025 campaign for your Carolina Panthers. And then eventually we'll have the mailbag back once the regular season begins. But before then, there will be a special mailbag. I'll give you more information about that on a show at a later date. This episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. The Panthers are back as we wrapped up day one of training camp on Wednesday morning here in Uptown Charlotte. I was there, boots on the ground. I got some observations of what I saw from Wednesday morning. Dave Canales, he had some clarity on what's going on with Josey Jewell and why the Panthers decided to, at least for me, shockingly release him on Tuesday. Were they not as caught off guard by what happened? And what does a successful season look like? Dave Canales answered that question. We'll tell you what he had to say and also give you some injury updates as the Panthers wrapped up their first day of training camp here ahead of the 2025 regular season. But starting off with some day one observations. I'm going to be there again on Thursday, on Saturday, on Monday, Tuesday, pretty much every single day that I can be there. I think next Friday and then FanFest, the only two times I will not be able to be out there. But for y'all, I'm going to have boots on the ground giving you my observations each and every show that I can of what's going on at training camp, because I missed you. I miss seeing y'all out there looking for autographs, making noise, being excited, getting your eyes on this 2025 edition of the Carolina Panthers. Really unfortunate that it's not to the point where y'all can be there. And we all know that had things logistically worked down there in Rock Hill, that we're not having this conversation. But unfortunately, we are. But let's take a look. First team defense. And early on in camp, without the pads being on, I'm not totally focused on like player performance, because you do not play football without shoulder pads and your thigh pads and all of that. I mean, sometimes you can choose not to, but you don't play football without pads. So I'm really have a hard time taking too much out of what I see in the first 3-4 days before the pads actually go on. And in a couple weeks' times, 2 weeks from now, they will have had joint practices with the Browns, and then they'd be preparing for their first preseason game. Like, once we get to that point in time, absolutely, I'm going to be not necessarily coming to grand conclusions, but I will have a better understanding of what exactly we're looking at and what this team potentially could be in 2025. So right now, I'm just monitoring rotations, who's in, who's out, injuries, all of that. Like, that's my main focus. And like, guys, look at this. For the YouTube audience, like, this is the roster card. There's a lot of guys up here. It's a lot to keep up with. So I'm looking around. We only have like one sight line in the long end zone. If you've been there last year, you know what I'm talking about. It's hard to see. Like, I don't know what's going on with the offensive line way down there. I don't know what's going on with the defensive line way down there. I can see the quarterbacks, but like, they're throwing against air for the most part. I can see the corners. I can see some punt return. And I can see like the 7v7, 11v11, as long as like I'm not being blocked by either media or other players. Either way, the defense, that was clearly this offseason something they needed to fix and something that needed address, and they were aggressive in doing so. And Dan Morgan talked about that on Tuesday when he met with the media the day prior to the Panthers being out there on the field for training camp today on Wednesday. I'm looking at the defensive line. Derek Brown, he is a full go, but they said they would be smart. So he was not out there during team period. Again, he was on the other side of the field, 120, 30 yards away from me. So I couldn't really see whether he was out there for individual drills. But as far as looking at the first team defense, when looking at them at the beginning and then during 11v11, it was Shy Tuttle. He was in there filling in. A'Shawn Robinson, Turk Wharton, those guys were the three defensive linemen that were rotating with the first team. Edge rushers, it was Patrick Jones II, the free agency signing from Minnesota, and then DJ Wonnum, who was limited. Those two guys were the primary edge rushers out there with the first team. Linebacker, the big news of the day yesterday is that Josey Jewell was released by the Panthers. There's potentially a future for him in Carolina, but right now he's not here. Trevin Wallace, Christian Rozeboom, those are now your two starting linebackers in Carolina. Corner, J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, Shaw Smith-Wade, no surprise there. Then safety, a lot of intrigue from me and from a lot of you about what the Panthers are going to do at safety. Teron Berrig, no surprise that he's out there as a starter, but the first guy that I saw, and the guy who I've noticed to be out there the most with the first team, primarily with Merrig, was Nick Scott, which is surprising because it feels like the Panthers brought back Nick Scott not to be a starter, but to be somebody that can play in a special teams role. And there's still plenty of time for Carolina, as we talked with Mike Kay about this the other day, to go bring in a veteran. If they do, that veteran's likely going to be the starter. But there's time for them this week, next week, leading up to that opening game against Cleveland in the preseason to see what they have in Nick Scott. I would think they know what they have in Nick Scott. The contract they signed him to come back to Carolina tells you what they think of Nick Scott, but he is a veteran. He knows the scheme. Jero Rivera at least has him in there right now. Don't freak out when hearing this, but there's time for other guys to step up and to really assume those roles. Now, Corey Thornton, I found this one to be interesting. I'm looking at my roster card as I had knocked it off and messed up my mic here while recording the show, and I'm trying to figure out who's number 31. And what we find out is Corey Thornton, who's the UDFA out of Louisville. He's somebody who was rotating in while J.C. Horn was not out there with the first team. So it was Mike Jackson and Corey Thornton when J.C. rotated out. Those are the two corners that are out there first. So the third corner right now, just based off of one day, appears to be the undrafted free agent from Louisville and Corey Thornton. And that is promising in a way because Carolina has wanted to go out there. You saw last year, not necessarily that they want to, but you saw last year that Damani Richardson got an opportunity to play a lot of snaps as an undrafted free agent. You also saw a guy in Jalen Coker got that opportunity. I wondered who would get that chance this year. And it's always about where are the spots on the roster, and certainly corner is one of those places. So Corey Thornton, he's someone who got an opportunity to do that. I asked J.C. Horn actually after practice as he met with us, the media, what he had seen in Corey, and he talked about that Corey Thornton had earned that opportunity based off his performance back in the spring. So something certainly to keep track of as Corey Thornton. I will. As Corey Thornton was in there while JC had rotated out. Caleb Evans, Jamar Bartholomew were the second team at corner. Damani Richardson and Lathan Ransom, both those guys rotated in with the first team, but primarily were the second team at that safety group. Nick Gordon, Princely, Uman Mielen were both with the second team primarily. And then Jacoby Windman, I got to see him out there at linebacker, as well as they got to figure out what they have behind Trevin Wallace and Christian Rozeboom. Punt returners, always looking at special teams. This is one of the competitions I'm really interested to see how it plays out. Raheem Blackshear did not really grade out, or just statistically turned out to be one of the better returners, whether it's kick return, punt return last year. So the Panthers have some other options that they're looking at. But when looking at the guys who are returning kicks, it was first Raheem Blackshear, and there was no return. They were just catching it. And Dan Morgan brought this up on Tuesday with Sam Martin right now injured on the non-football injury list with the hamstring. More on that later. They're going to just use the jugs machine, and that's what they did today. So they did not bring in a punter using the jugs machine. But Raheem Blackshear was first. Then Hunter Renfrow, Jimmy Horn Jr., Jacoby George, and David Moore. At first, I was a little confused because they had Adam Thielen and Tedero McMillan up there returning, at least catching punts, fielding punts, but both of those guys just caught one and then move off to the sideline. So it feels like they're more so just trying to practice their catching ability than they were actually going to be a part of that. So Raheem Blackshear, Hunter Renfrow, Jimmy Horn Jr., Jacoby George, and David Moore. It was in that order. And Mike told y'all that this coaching staff thinks highly of David Moore. He came in late each time. I guess he was doing some other special team stuff because he is going to be a part of other special teams units. So I don't know if you take too much out of him going last as far as just the way things were set up. But prior to that, Blackshear, Renfro, Horn, and George. Offensively, Austin Corbett, Cade Mays, those guys battling to be the starting center in Carolina as of day one. Austin Corbett was the first team center. We'll see if that changes up on day two, if they're going to rotate those guys and allow Cade Mays the opportunity. Now, there was a period of time where the quarterbacks were in the offense just together and they're throwing to the wide receivers on air where Cade Mays was snapping the ball to Bryce. But as far as 11v11, it was Austin Corbett out there with the first team. And of course, A.K. Klein at left tackle, Damian Lewis at left guard, right guard, Robert Hunt, right tackle, Taylor Moton. The wide receivers who primarily work at the first team today, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Terrell McMillan, and Jalen Coker. Hunter Renfro did cycle in there with the first team during the second 11v11 period, but the first one, I only really noticed him out there with the second team. So he is right there, maybe seemingly as your fifth wide receiver at this moment in time. Trevor Etienne, the rookie out of Georgia, almost at Florida, rotated in with Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard with the first team. And in Mitchell Evans, James Mitchell, both had a good amount of snaps. The first team at tight end, as Tommy Tremble is out as of right now on PUP, physically unable to perform list with that back injury, the back surgery he had back in the spring. And Mitchell actually was out there first during the first 7v7 period with XL, T-Mac, and Adam, who were the receivers during all of that. Plays of the day. I'm going to always try to find some plays that stood out to me. Number one, first interception of training camp belongs to Damani Richardson. I remember a Monday last year during training camp, he intercepted Bryce Young, then later on intercepted, what's his name? Jack Plummer. And it's like, okay, this Richardson kid, pretty good. Maybe he has a chance to make the team. Of course, he did make the team and became maybe the best safety the Carolina had late in the season, as they had a plethora of injuries. Now was just overall just a disappointing group on the roster last year. At this point in time last season, you felt like it was going to be a point of strength. That turned out to not be the case. But Damani Richardson back for another year. And Dave Canales talked about he just has a knack for finding the football. Found it last year. He's found it again today. It was 7v7. Bryce had Hunter Renfro, David Moore, Rico Dowdle. Those guys were on the field. Did not see who else was out there on the field offensively, but a nice play on the sideline by Damani Richardson to get the first interception of camp. Number two, this was not good. You probably heard by now, but Princely Umanmielen hit Bryce Young. First day on the job, at least for training camp, touched the quarterback. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, you don't want to see that, because he hit his arm, and they dodged one because it could have been bad. Nearly would have been, I guess, I don't know whether it's a fumble, would have been an interception, but nearly would have been a play that they would have been able to make. So the good thing is, even without pads, Princely's going out there, and he's getting to the quarterback. The bad thing is you touch the quarterback. That's a big no-no, but it's encouraging from you let go of Jadeveon so that Nick Scorton and Princely could be in this role. And at least about pads day one, you're seeing what your investment is looking like. And Bryce chalked it up to just competition, and it's football. So the good thing, nothing serious happened there. Nick Scott, he also, this is another play. He had a nice PBU during 7v7 against Tyler Mabry, who is a tight end. And they have so many guys on the roster that Mabry, he's number 47. He's 43. There's two guys who have the number 43. There's also two guys who have 35, including Matthew Wright. It's like, that's how many dudes. It's looking like a college in a way with double numbers. But yeah, of course, actually better players. The controversy, the kicker competition going on. Matthew Wright and Ryan Fitzgerald. Matthew Wright was the kicker up there today, kicking on the skinny post with, I believe, Andy Dalton holding. Sam Martin, the punter, is supposed to be the holder, but Andy Dalton looks like he held. I think he was a holder back in college at TCU, but you had to go fact check that. Matthew went 4 for 5. He made his first one, then missed, and then make. I don't know the distances. I think they go 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So if they do 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, he either missed from 35, 40 yards on that second kick, then he made the other ones on the skinny post. So Matthew Wright 4 for 5 and getting the first opportunity as far as the kicker competition going on here in Carolina. We talked about this yesterday. Josey Jewell, no longer a Carolina Panther. What happened? Dave Canales provides some clarity on that. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, bust, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins on August 4th. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make fantasy season the best one yet. The news of the day on Tuesday as Carolina Panthers veterans arrived for training camp was that their veteran linebacker, Josey Jewell, had been released by the team. And according to a team spokesperson, Jewell wanted to prioritize his health and recovery and be considerate of his teammates, and the move allowed the Panthers to move forward with a group of players who were able to get all the practice reps in when camp started. And if all goes well, Josey could return to the team at some point in the future. Will that be this season, next season? Right now, we don't know. But that certainly was a surprise to me, a surprise to you, a surprise to a lot of us, as that did not appear to be in the cards. When I got to camp today, I was just talking with some people in the media, just trying to figure out what's going on here. Because it looks like Josey said, yeah, I'm going to give up some of the money that you owe me, and I am going to step away. But, that's not necessarily how things always play out. And he certainly could have been, and I bet he is, concerned about his health, considering that this concussion has been going on. It's been bothering him for nearly 8 months at this point in time, dating back to last December when he missed the final 2 games of the regular season. So I feel for him, absolutely. Be dealing with something like that and have your future in jeopardy football wise, and just probably concerned about what your long-term health is going to be. And this is a damaging game that we all love and that they play and that they of course love as well. But I was caught off guard by this, and I think a lot of y'all also were. So try to find some clarity. It apparently, at least from my understanding, and I'm going to play what Dave Canales had to say as we asked him about this following camp. Josey's been in the concussion protocol dating back to OTAs and minicamp, but no one ever asked about this. When we're out here for training camp, like, we get this roster sheet, and at the bottom of it, I don't know if you can see it. It says non-football injury, active/pup, reserve/pup, and then you got international player pathway. Like, we know who's out, who's not going to be available. You also will see guys in non-contact uniforms, but during OTAs, there's no contact. Mandatory minicamp, there's no contact. So it's not as if you really need to, we're not going to be able to see it. And they're not really putting out any of these kind of roster cards to let you know what's going on. So I'm not saying Carolina was hiding anything. It was surprising to find out, because at no point did it feel like, at least from what had been reported by anyone out there, because I wasn't out there during OTA's mandatory minicamp, because there's only 3 days, I guess maybe 5 media days to get out there. So you're not really seeing anything. But apparently he was going through it back then. So it popped up. It was not a surprise to Carolina. Now, were they expecting to make that move yesterday? I don't know. I don't think it had anything to do with them taking Christian Rozeboom back in March. And if they were really that concerned, maybe they bring somebody else in as a veteran to allow for those more competition. Because I think when they brought in Rozeboom, just based off of Canales' quote that I read to you yesterday that Mike Kay had pulled from the spring, they were looking to have competition in that room. And now the competition is gone because Christian Rozeboom and Trevor Wallace are the only 2 veteran linebackers in there, and 2 guys that you would expect at this point in time to be the starter. But now it makes them very thin if they had a situation like they had last year, which has already begun, where that linebacker room was really banged up. So from my understanding, yes, that Josey was, it was an amicable split and all of that. But it wasn't just simply him being like, oh yeah, I don't want to hurt the team, so I'm going to step away and, you guys can take some of the money I have. They kind of sat down and talked with his agent about that. Dave Canales, he was asked about this, and he did provide clarity on what exactly is going on with Josey Jewell and why he's no longer, at the time of being, a Carolina Panther.
Yeah, I mean, we had to adhere to the normal concussion protocol, which we did. We did all that. And first, to talk about Josey, you talk about a leader. Guy didn't say a lot. When he talked, people listened. the toughness, the character, the aggressive style of play, always making plays on the ball. Throughout his career, the reason why we brought him here, and I think for me as a first-year head coach last year, to have somebody that I could point to who really exemplifies the type of effort, the type of physicality, the character. He's a no-nonsense guy. He wants guys to just look at the truth of what it was, get to the bottom of it and fix it. And he was always at the heart of those conversations. So it's a big loss, definitely for us from that standpoint, And then as far as the rest of it, we just kind of had to take it at Josey's pace and with all the specialists that were working with him, Dan and Brant, worked with the agent and talked to them. And we felt like this was the best outcome right now, with the first, and most important thing for Josey is getting healthy, and getting him to a place where he can make that sound decision on playing football, which he wants to do, or whatever is after that. So I'm proud of the fact that we just had upfront conversations throughout the whole time. And, that's what I appreciated about the interaction.
So they had upfront conversations throughout the whole time, as Dave Canales, Carolina Panthers head coach, said on Wednesday morning when addressing the media following day one of Panthers training camp. So it wasn't a surprise to them, clearly, yesterday, the decision that they made. It was not on my bingo card. It was not on your bingo card, but it's a reality, as Josey Jewell currently is not a Carolina Panther. I find it interesting that Dave continues to say that, or at least it said it's possible they can come back, and that there was a reporting out there from Panthers.com that he could come back. We'll see. Christian Rozeboom now steps into that role, and he was asked about his awareness of the situation and said that he doesn't know a lot about the behind-the-scenes stuff because it's really nothing that involves him as far as a contractual situation. But he was more worried about Josey as a human being, which I'm right there with him, even though I don't know Josey Jewell personally like Christian Rozeboom does. And he said he talked to Josey Jewell on Tuesday morning and said it's a disappointment that he's not going to be around for a little bit. So they keep saying a little bit, maybe back. We'll see. And now he's been elevated to a starter, and he talked about it's not how he expected it, but this is football, and he's wearing number 56, what Trevin Wallace wore last year. Apparently Trevin Wallace just wanted to wear his old college number, and there was no sort of pay for that jersey number. And it's a big opportunity now for Christian Rozeboom. Had 135 tackles last season, a career year. We went over the PFF numbers. They're not overwhelming, but he did play. And you have to understand this. He played on a good defense in LA, a Rams team that made it to the divisional round, and in that snow game against Philadelphia had an opportunity late in that game to potentially have won that. And who knows, maybe they win a Super Bowl if that happens instead. But he's taken most of his opportunities last year. He stayed healthy. He said, knock on wood, he's been able to do that. And certainly for Carolina and all of you, knock on wood, they're going to need that to continue. And he wore the green dot today. So it's not just that he's taken that spot from Josey Jewell, but now he's the guy wearing the helmet communication, and he's in the middle of your defense. He's becoming just de facto one of the defensive leaders because he will be telling them what formations they got to be in. The communication was a thing that Dave Canales really lauded the defense for today, that they did a really good job communicating, lining up, and making things hard for the offense. And that is a good thing, just to hear the defense making things hard for the offense. Hopefully that doesn't mean the offense is going to struggle, but typically the defense had the offense at this point in time during training camp, which is day one. And he also did mention, Christian Rozeboom did, that this is his sixth season playing in the scheme. So a ton of experience, not having to learn a bunch of new verbiage and all that. That's a good thing for Carolina as he steps in there, taking over Josey Jewell's role, who could be back at some point in time, but we will see. What does a successful season look like for the Carolina Panthers? Dave Canales was asked that, and he answered. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I've been using Monarch Money for the past few months, and it's been a game changer as I've managed my money throughout my summer of travels. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. What does a successful season look like for the Carolina Panthers in 2025? We all want to know. And Dave Canales was asked that on Wednesday morning following day one of training camp, and this is what he had to say.
Weekly growth, and right now our focus is having a great camp. For me, it's owning the system and working ourselves into condition to where we can be ready to play week one. That's the focus, and I think with this group, with just talking to the guys in the team meeting, with the group that we've brought together, how quickly can we play together? How quickly can we communicate and show that style of football that we want to put out there, and I think that the sky's the limit for this group. I think that this is going to be a very competitive team. I don't think people are going to want to play us by the style of football that we play. I'm expecting that. My expectations are really high for this group. They are every year, and we're going to shoot for as good as we can get. My language to the group is I want to make sure we maximize the talent in this room. That'll take us as far as we need to go, but that's going to be our focus.
I think that the sky is the limit for this group. I think that this is going to be a very competitive team. I don't think people are going to want to play us by the style of football that we're going to play. That absolutely was the quote of the day from day one of Panthers training camp. Dave Canales did not use the P word, much like Dan Morgan did not use P word on Tuesday, which is playoffs, but he believes that this is going to be an improved football team that's going to be hard to play. And that teams are not going to want to play, and that they're focused on maximizing the talent. And that will take them where they want to go. And that's really what you're trying to do, is maximize what you have on your roster and really meet your peak and your level. Because not everybody, as we know, only one team's going to lose the Super Bowl. And only so many teams are really capable of truly getting to the playoffs. Like, can you maximize what you have on the roster? Like, that is truly his job as Carolina Panthers head coach. And I think about him saying that I don't think people are going to want to play this team. That's a mentality that goes back to day one when him and Dan Morgan first got here to Carolina. Remember Dan Morgan sitting up there at Bank of America Stadium, his press conference, saying that he wants to have people fear the logo, wants to bring back fear in the hearts of anyone who sees that Carolina Panthers logo. That's what he wanted to do. Well, saying that I don't think people are going to want to play us sounds a lot like that same mentality. So last year they tried to build a foundation, and JC talked about this when speaking to us today, that it's really nice to have that continuity and to know what this program is. And there's a difference between a team and a program, and know the training camp's the same as far as practice and all that, and having a nice routine in here and knowing what the expectations. And Dave Canales reiterated what the expectations are for this team. And Dan brought up on Tuesday what his expectations of what they're trying to build and what they believe they are building in Carolina are. That all goes hand in hand with what Dave Canales had to say about thinking that the sky's the limit for this team, that they're going to be very competitive, and he does not think people are going to want to play them based off of the style of football that they play this season. And we'll find out, because that's certainly a different kind of spicy Dave Canales than we have heard. He's always had a lot of energy, can never question that. That is a notable quote that I will certainly have written down and go back to if things do go the way that he believes. And even in, unfortunately, if hopefully this is not the case, if things don't go well, bring it up. But still, if things go the right way, and that means success, and that's what he's talking about, is what a successful season looks like for Carolina, we'll absolutely be bringing back that quote. Injury updates, Dave Canales gave those as well following practice on Wednesday. Here's what he had to say.
Tommy's going to have to progress week to week for us. He's doing great. I want to say he's ahead of schedule, but I just know we're going to just take this thing as it comes. But right now he's making great strides. He looks strong in his rehab and all that. So I'm not sure exactly timeline-wise. I wouldn't say Tommy's going to be back soon, like within the next couple weeks. But, I think 3 or 4 weeks or something like that as we evaluate it could potentially be there. And then Bobby got imaging and all the things. It's a hamstring. He did some stuff. I saw him out today before practice. He was down there running, changing direction already. So he's already starting on a pretty good curve. So I hope to get him back pretty soon. Sam Martin's kind of in the same world that way, so it was something we have to be precautionary about. We don't want to throw him back out there. They didn't clear for us right away. So, but I think he's probably on a similar timeline.
Finally won him.
Yeah.
Did a lot today.
Yeah, we're just honestly being smart with DJ. He's had a couple of different things. Obviously, he came in with the quad injury, and so we're just having to make sure that we're able to progress him into camp the right way. So we're going to be smart about DJ. He's going to be a big part of what we're doing.
What about
We'll do a couple more. Yeah, Dan's progressing back from a calf. So again, I don't know exactly the specific timeline for Dan, but he is doing some on ground stuff. I wouldn't say he's at the same markers as Bobby and Sam, but I think he's probably right behind them there. So we hope to get Dan back in there.
So some nice updates there as far as injury wise for Tommy Tremble, Bobby Brown III, Sam Martin, Dan Chisena, and DJ Wonham. I had to sneak in that Dan Chisena question. I told you I was going to do it. I needed to know what's going on. No one had asked. So I was like, what's going on with him? Somebody who Dave has brought up as a guy who would be in a competition as far as wide receiver goes, not to catch footballs, but to be someone special teams wise. And that will be a big piece of whoever those guys who are your, fifth, sixth, seventh wide receiver, they go that deep, are on the roster. They're going to have to play special teams. And that's what Dan Chisena would do. So dealing with a calf, but seems to be behind Bobby Brown, who had some imaging on his hamstring. Sam Martin also a hamstring, but both those guys appear to be running before practice and closer to returning rather than being far away. But Tommy Tremble, that's the one that I think most of us are really focused on at this point in time, and maybe 3 to 4. It's funny because he said, I don't want to give a timeline and blah, blah, blah. But he's like, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. So maybe 3 to 4 weeks. That puts us, we go 3 weeks from now. If I can get my calendar to pop up here, we got 1, 2, 3. That would put us going into that Texans preseason game. I kind of would doubt he'd play in it at that point in time. We have no idea what Dave's approach to preseason is going to be. When that time comes in a couple of weeks, I will certainly ask if no one else does. And then 4 weeks, it would have put him right in line with the Pittsburgh game. Again, if it takes that long, kind of would doubt that he would actually be out there playing against Pittsburgh. So feels like we're not going to see Tommy Tremble really active until you get to week 1. And that is the hope. But right now, he's ahead of schedule, which is a good thing. But still, it's not like it's going to happen really anytime soon as far as like this week or next with Tommy Tremble returning from that back injury. I did see him out there walking around. That's a good thing. It's not like he was MIA. But yeah, Tommy Tremble still a little bit of time before he'll be back out there for your Carolina Panthers. And DJ Wonham dealt with some stuff in the spring. They kind of held him out a little bit in the spring, and then a little bit today as well. So a guy who's going to be a big role for Carolina, but that gives opportunities for Nick Scorton and Princely Monmiel on the young rookie edge rushers to get out there as well and rotate in with the first team. But that is going to wrap up this edition of the Carolina Panthers, of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to favorite podcasts, where I have all of your Carolina Panthers training camp stuff or coverage going on right now. Be sure to at me or DM me and just follow me over on Twitter and Blue Sky, Julian Council, and be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding, and I will be back with y'all again on Thursday/Friday, whenever you check it out, with updates from day 2 of Panthers training camp here on Locked On Panthers.